are talking about the movie Scare Me. This one is directed by Mark Stevens, who also co-wrote this. And this is an anthology movie, I believe based off a short film from 2016. And what we have a group of young adults who are going camping and sitting around the campfire telling scary stories. Now, they are joined by the seemingly friendly local park ranger, and they obviously recount stories to each other, but there seems to be something maybe paranormal going on in the actual area itself. So, let's discuss. So, interestingly, with an anthology, this almost takes the opposite approach to the other anthology I reviewed recently, Evil Little Things, because this one is very much about the A storyline, the wraparound story, and has just small, like 3 or 4 little snippets of mini-movies within it, but there's the vast bulk of the storytelling is the actual wraparound story itself. Now, the wraparound story we'll come on to again. I will tell you briefly about the other kind of stories. We have one at the beginning where we simply have this guy seemingly getting sacrificed by some witches. There's no real story to it. It just is that. There's lots of pretty girls with their boobies out, so there's something to be said for that one. But there's no actual story of it. But there you go. Probably the best to me out of the mini stories, I suppose, is that there's this kind of like a pirate radio or podcasting place out in the middle of nowhere with this woman doing some type of sort of podcast, online podcast, and she gets a knock on the door, and there seemingly is a guy who is been shot, but he may be harbouring a paranormal secret. The makeup for that one was pretty good, I gotta say. I won't tell you what happens, but nonetheless, I thought that was quite fun, and there are some creepy moments in there where after there's a change in this guy, shall we say, that our kind of protagonist approaches, and it's well shot. But again, it's quite short. So that's then we have a brief vampire one, which I've got to say is not as well done. It's basically the this police captain reviewing body cam footage of an apparent shooting by a police officer in a seemingly unarmed black man, and obviously he's stressing out because obviously the media frenzy that will surround that, but there may appear to be some type of vampiric activity going on. The effects of this one are quite poor, I have to say, and it does the cliche with the big old fangs and the awkward talking and all of this. Yeah, not particularly good, that one. The police captain's quite fun, I've got to say, in that one, though, because he has the comedy swearing thing down pat on that one. I did like that. And then we have the weird one, which is this kind of like, it reminds me of the Bruce Willis story from Pulp Fiction with a gimp. We have this guy seemingly getting up to stuff with a gimp, and this kind of neighbour spying through the window, but there may well be kind of some type of paranormal stuff going on there. They're all very short. They're all very short with no real kind of plots, really, maybe with the exception of the one with the radio tower, which does have a little bit of a plot, which I think was the best one. It starts to kind of tell a couple of other ones as well, but the story's going to get cut off, which I thought was quite fun. But let's talk about the main A plot here, which is the wraparound story. Now, the interesting thing with this movie is it tries to be somewhat meta and actually have some commentary on the kind of the horror movie genres, pointing out things like certain cliches, and it also tries to be somewhat political as well, with some of the kind of the park rangers accusing our campers of being snowflakes and PC and all of that, and then we have the kind of obviously the other side of it with the campers themselves who are thinking these are kind of like the redneck, hillbilly types, and there's some kind of like political stereotypes kind of thrown around, which I thought again were quite fun here. Now the story of this one is relatively probably more in depth than anything out of the actual mini stories here. And was actually quite fun and involves some quite good visuals where seemingly people are possessed by some type of malevolent shadow, and almost makes them have like kind of snowy like TV eyes, if that makes sense. When you kind of have to have static on the TV, they have kind of these like sort of eyes like that, which I thought was quite fun. And it's almost like a kind of somewhat of a possession movie to a certain degree, but we're really not quite sure what it is. And you know who's infected, so you kind of have a bit of the paranoia involved there. I actually thought the story for that one was quite fun. What doesn't work with that one, I think the problem is, I mean, there's much they joke about horror movies having stereotypes. Some of our characters here are quite stereotypical, ironically. And I have to say the acting isn't brilliant from some of the cast members here. Some fare better than others, but there are some definite weak links within the kind of the cast members here. The effects on this one are a little bit of a mixed bag. Again, I will say, but it does make for at least it has an interesting story and points to a kind of a larger mythology. It almost would have been better not to have the anthology and have this just a simple story about that and have it a bit more developed, perhaps. Yeah, I don't think it's handled quite properly. I think the narrative gets a little bit muddled, but the idea is solid, and I do quite like some of the kind of the commentary that is picked up on here. The characters, again, going into kind of cliches, caricatures more than characters to a certain degree. But nonetheless, I think this was an interesting anthology because it plays a little differently to a lot of them. Normally, the framing device is relatively kind of loose and doesn't have much meat on it bones, and quite often is the weaker part of the story. But here, it is certainly the A part, and the smaller chapters are relatively tacked on to a certain degree. So it makes it for a unique experience to a certain degree in regards to watching an anthology film. And like I've mentioned, almost the polar opposite of how the other anthology I reviewed recently, Evil Little Things, has done it. So overall, I've got to say, it's a relatively average film. I don't think it's bad. It's watchable. There are some interesting ideas here. There are some fun kind of commentary and comedy moments, but I don't think it's going to have been anyone's conversation towards the end of the year, shall we say. 5 out of 10. Have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.